Hello and welcome back to Malwise Diaries. This is episode 2 on how I hacked a client site. For those of you who have returned, thank you, and for those who are new to the channel, the series discusses real-world engagement and real-world cybersecurity issues that I come across. So without further ado, let's get into today's episode, how I hacked a WordPress site legally. So we were engaged by a client to assess their 3 WordPress sites. 2 essentially brochure websites, just providing information about them and their subsidiaries, and a e-commerce site, which is where they generated 95% of their revenue for the business, apart from the 5 which trade shows and stuff like that. But the majority of it was this e-commerce site. So we kicked off the engagement with vulnerability scans, as we always do, and a few other tools within Kali Linux, WordPress scan, Nikto, and a few of other tools within that operating system. We were also directory busting, and while that was going on, myself and a colleague were going through the site to make sure there was any errors in the page source, or if any comments, anything that would give us a sort of hint and tips of how to breach it, basically looking for developer mistakes. So while that was going on, we were looking at the shop, trying to get cross-site scripting, see if we could get SQL injection. All which failed at this point in time. So we got together, had a bit of a discussion about how we were going to tackle this. Had most of the results of the scans in. There wasn't really much in there that alluded to anything interesting or anything that we could compromise, or at least take advantage of for our malicious aims of compromising one of them sites, or hopefully all of them sites. So we decided to focus on the shop, because that's where they would have the highest monetary loss if that was to be breached, or their client list leaked, or whatever nefarious things you can sort of think of. The list is endless. So we noticed you could sign up just to purchase their goods. So we signed up, and we did a password reset to see how that worked. And we noticed once you'd signed up with the username and password, to get back into your account, you'd put your username, and it would email you an MFA code. Oh, that's interesting. So we started having a look at the API endpoints that dealt with that, and we started to explore them, and we noticed the endpoint that provided the OTP didn't have any sort of rate limiting, throttling, however you want to call it, on that endpoint. So we thought, interesting, can we brute force the OTP? So we started having a little play around with that, resetting our password, seeing what sort of format it was, and we sort of guessed, based on how it was returning, which is all numbers, that there was going to be about 1 million possibilities, which is quite a lot to get through even in a couple of days. So we thought. So essentially, we worked out, well, if we can do our own by just putting our email in and getting an OTP, surely we can do the administrators or anybody's we choose, as long as we know their username. So we went back to the login, and we noticed it took either username or it took email address. Interesting. So we did admin, for example, and then reset that, and then noticed that it said successful, your OTP been sent. So even the sort of verboseness of the applications telling us exactly what it has done was really interesting, and really helped us sort of further the aim of the assessment in breaching that account. So we wrote a script and multiplied that script. So I ran from 100,000 to 200,000. My colleague ran from 2 to 4, and then we had various scripts in the 200,000 blocks, passing them around to several team members. Reset the password, and essentially this script would scrape until it found a successful OTP code, and it would inform you and log in as that individual. So we let that go, and within about 45 minutes of resetting that admin's password, the script of my colleague had successfully identified the OTP and logged in as an administrator. So we're now into the shop as the WordPress admin. Essentially, that's game over, really. We then, from that admin site, well, the WordPress admin site, using that administrator, we thought, well, is this the same administrator password throughout? So we tried it, it wasn't. The rest, we're just using the default WordPress functionality, no OTPs. So we're like, what can we do? We can do quite a lot now. So we downloaded a file editor plugin within the WordPress site, and then we deployed a shell. We then, while in the sort of WordPress server, we noticed that they clearly used one cPanel account to set them all up, because we could navigate at the command line through the entirety. We also created ourselves an SSH user to ensure persistence. But essentially now we'd got one of our shells on, we'd had access to the root file system, and we could see the sites, or the folders for all 3 sites. This is interesting. So then my colleague wrote a script that we deployed in the second site, and then you navigate to that area and launch the script, and it logs you in as the first administrator on that site. So we've now compromised site 2, all because they hadn't segregated the WordPress instances on that server. Once you breach one, you could just go laterally through the entire server, breaching all 3 WordPress sites, rather than all being isolated or just locked down, secured in the correct way, different users for each site with different permissions, or you could have used different servers or different cPanel accounts to do that for you. But essentially one user controlled all 3. Yes, it was easy, but from when we got in, it was a breeze to sort of get in and out the network, and we were doing all this undetected. There was no alerting that we logged in as an administrator and downloaded a plugin and then deployed shells. We then went to the folder of the last WordPress site, ran the script again, navigated to the page. You navigate to the page, run the script from there in the title of wherever you put it, and then it executes. So now we've got WordPress admins for all 3 sites, their full customer lists, everything. So from what was on the outside a reasonably secure site, a developer mistake on the e-commerce or the shop, by allowing that custom OTP that just sends you it with no rate limiting, allowed us to breach all 3 sites. So it was obviously, we were ecstatic. We thought, this is great. I always get a bit of a buzz when actually we get in and you hack it and you think, I've done my job. The client's going to see value. So interestingly, the site had been assessed about 3 years in a row. So they'd come to us as a company for the 4th assessment, and no one had compromised it until now. But no one had really, I don't believe, went any further than running some scans and doing some sort of a very brief sort of look at the site. A lot of pen testers you find are infrastructure pen testers that are went onto web applications because that's what the company's done, or they're just not as familiar with web applications in general. They're focusing on that infrastructure side, or they've not been developers and they don't understand how sites and servers actually work in some cases. Therefore, they miss some of the simpler things like endpoints with no throttling. Maybe logging in and just seeing what you can do and see where you can exploit the logic. So the sort of moral of the story was, yes, the site seemed pretty well secure in general. Obviously, breaching a brochure's website, unless they've done something wrong with an outdated plugin, is not as easy as certain things. The shop site had no real significant vulnerabilities like cross-site scripting and/or SQL injection or anything sort of nefarious that we could have gotten from the outside. The crux of it was a developer tried to deliver a security solution that was bespoke and he thought was unhackable, but then by failing to throttle or put some protections around that endpoint, we were able to brute force just shy of 800,000 codes in 45 minutes, allowing us to assume the administrator role and then move laterally through the other 3 sites. So what did the client get out of it? They got an understanding that the site wasn't as secure as they thought it was. They were able to implement a fix to ensure there was a bit more of a robust login process. They segregated their 3 sites so we couldn't move laterally in another engagement, or a hacker couldn't move laterally through all 3. They they disabled PHP scripts from running on the server, so if someone did get in, then they couldn't execute certain scripts within certain directories to make sure that was a less of a entry point for them. And they deployed some of the minor recommendations we made around security headers and turning off some of the basic things like cron jobs and XML RPC, and ensuring we couldn't enumerate the users via blogs or RSS feeds, and some of the other things that just give you little breadcrumbs of information, which seem very innocuous at first, but actually they build up a bigger picture once you start looking at, oh, they're on Engine X, they're on WordPress X, this is a username. I know I can probably do this if there's a flaw because one of the security headers isn't in. They all build that defense in depth approach to your application security. So I would never dismiss all these very small incremental steps that really do add value in the grand scheme of things. And a lot of them are 5-10 minute jobs. And personal opinion is, if you're not doing these very basic steps, your developers sort of been negligent by not putting them in correctly. And like I said, they're really, really simple to put in. I think should be sort of a baseline standard for when you're developing a web application of any sort. So, thank you for joining me on episode 2 of how we hacked a client's WordPress site legally. Thank you very much. Please comment, like, and subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. If you've got any comments, please leave them below, and I'll reply as and when. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.